Okay, we'll see if that works. Okay, so tonight we are covering WordPress security, and I like to do this talk once a year at the very least, just to keep everyone up to date on what to do, what not to do. Let's see if this works. Yay. Okay, so WordPress security best practices. I've updated it for 2017, so it's got all hopefully relevant and up-to-date stuff. I'll put this up on the website and share it out, but this is too long, didn't want to read, so you can read that later. So I want to introduce my pal. He's a security expert, a guy called Sun Tzu. He's a Chinese general. He was born in 512 BC. A great military strategist and philosopher as well, and he wrote a fantastic book called The Art of War, which you can read online for free. Sun Tzu says, victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first, then seek to win. What does that mean? Well, he's basically saying don't wait until your site gets hacked first, lock it down today and get ready to defend it. Sun Tzu also says, to know your enemy, you must become your enemy. So learn how hackers try to get into your site so you can preemptively fix it and be ready for what's to come. And lastly, and I love this one, even the finest sword plunged into salt water will eventually rust. So just because your site's secure today, it doesn't mean it can't get hacked tomorrow or next month or next year. So update regularly. Because you are always at war with multiple unknown enemies. If you have a website, that's what's happening. So web security is like a big circle, it's cyclic. There's always a current threat out there. It doesn't matter how well you've honed your website security, there's always a current threat out there. And the worst type of threat are the ones you don't know about. Okay? So you need to be prepared, and this is what this presentation hopefully will help you to do. So you need to understand your weaknesses, you need to build a solid defense, and you need to have a plan of attack. Okay? Because there's always a current threat. So it just keeps going round and round and round. So here's a snapshot of the ultimate secure site. So it's locked away in a deep, deep, dark basement. There's no internet connection and no user interaction. No one touches it. Do not touch my computer. And it's switched off. So that's great. You will not get hacked, I guarantee. Okay? But it's pretty useless because you can't use it. So there needs to be a balance between security. Okay, before we start getting into the secure stuff, everything is hackable. Okay? If there's a password on it, a way in, somebody will be able to get in. So the best we can do is make our site less attractive than others to hack into. The picture behind it is of a BMW, and yes, it does have flames coming out the side, and this was legal in South Africa a few years ago, and it was to stop carjacking. So if you were stuck at the traffic lights, someone with a mask came towards you with a golf club, you press a button and they get fried. Okay? It could only be installed in BMWs, so the police reports the next few months afterwards, the number of attacks on BMWs dropped significantly. Okay? So would you break into this car? No. So let's try and harden our website so that hackers just go, nah, it's too much. Let's go to somebody else. Okay, so a lot of people start with the website, but really you have to take a step back because the most vulnerable part of your website is you. Because you guys are setting up all the security, you guys know the website, you know the data, you know the traffic, the users. So if you're really serious about security or you're interested in that part of security, definitely buy this book. So it's called The Art of Deception by Kevin Mitnick. He was on the FBI's most wanted list for about 5 years. I don't think there was any American government military computer he didn't hack into. But he didn't write scripts that attacked a computer for 1,000 bots. He actually targeted people himself. So the people who built the systems, the people who used the systems, so he attacked them, their secretaries, the people around it, gathered information that would allow him then to get access to either the physical server or be able to guess the password and credentials. So a very interesting book on social engineering. Okay, let's get to it. So fundamentals in security. When you're installing a new WordPress website, please don't leave it in setup mode. So don't install it and leave it with the database and stuff. Go through the entire process, get it done, get it set up with your username and password. Because there's new scripts out there that are looking for particular files in WordPress setup that are there when you've installed WordPress but not set it up. And it's then easy for them to set their own database server and then create your website before you get it done. So if you're installing a new WordPress website, get it all done, start to finish. Don't just leave it up there. Okay, usernames and passwords. Obviously, these are probably the biggest thing that people think of when you're talking about security. But it's not just WordPress. Again, take a step back, think back. WordPress is built on a stack of different systems. So you've got cPanel, or your hosting system. When you log in, where do you put all the PHP files? That's got a username, that's got a login. You might have email on that as well. Not so much, most people have it on Google now, but still there's a fair amount of people who, when they buy hosts, they put email on it as well. So each email has a username and a password. FTP, File Transfer Protocol, when you're putting your images and your files up, it's got a password. SSH is the command line version of it, still has a password unless you use keys, which is good. MySQL, database server, that's got a username and password, and of course WordPress. So when you're thinking about usernames and passwords, think of everything that you connect to it, not just WordPress. Avoid typical administrator type usernames, so avoid things like administrator, root manager, guest, backup, system, test, site admin, all those sorts of things that people would think of as being an admin role. Try and avoid those, but definitely avoid admin. The reason it's the top targeted username for spam guessing is because probably maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, when you went into cPanel, you had little scripts that would install things like a blog for you, or a Joomla for you, or a Drupal for you. And it's an automated script that went through, and it actually used the admin as the username within the script. So everyone just pressed that button, installed WordPress, they got an admin username and password. Okay? So millions and millions of websites went through that process, so that's why hackers like to target the username admin, because there's still a fair few people out there with it. So if you do have admin, please change it when you get back tonight. Passwords. Don't use this system, so don't replace letters with numbers that look like the numbers. So letter B with the number 8, or the number E with 3. It doesn't do anything nowadays. I might have done that maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but scripts and processing power is so advanced nowadays that if you've got that method of passwords, it's going to get guessed easy. So don't do that. Again, going back to that book, avoid personal and social information when you're creating your usernames and password. Don't use memorable dates, date of birth, marriage. Don't use your footy club or your car registration or your house numbers. Those are all social information that people can guess. So an example of bad passwords: Bob 1976, probably when he was born. The Swans 2017. Yeah. So I've got links on the bottom of these pages that support all this information. You'll see that on the slide you can click through. It's just, I don't want to bore you with 1,000 slides because there's quite a few here anyway. Okay, so when you're going for passwords, try and use something like a random 60 character at least password. Use uppercase, lowercase, digits, and punctuation. Okay, there's an example of one password. Or even better, you can use 4 random words stringed together. Okay, this has been proven to be very secure as well. So for example, this one is correct horse battery staple, and run them all together as one password. Very, very difficult for password guessers to find those. Okay, so if you are using the random character one, yes, it's very difficult for you to remember. That's kind of sucky for you. But it's great because it's difficult for hackers to guess, which is yay. So again, we've got the pros and cons for both ones. It's a balance. And try to avoid reusing the same password on multiple sites as well. And there's a great article called "The Real Life Risks of Reusing the Same Passwords." Some guy's done some analytics on people who have reused the same password and managed to get hacked. You can always use something called LastPass. It's a password management service. So it allows you to generate all these secure passwords, and it also remembers them as well. It is completely secure. It encrypts stuff on your local machine. It transfers the passwords up to the website securely via SSL data transfer. And if you're really paranoid, which I am, you can use 2-factor authentication to get into it. Okay, and I'll cover 2-factor authentication later. But you can get a 14-day trial for the enterprise level. The enterprise level is good because it allows you, if you've got multiple people, like if you've got developers working for you, you can share a password to a website and they can log in if they've got LastPass, but they don't know what the password is. So you can share site passwords, they can log in, but they can't change it, they don't know what the password is. So that's one of the top features I use LastPass for. So that takes care of yourself, but if you've got other people logging into your website as well, you might want to consider forcing them to use strong passwords, because you don't want them registering as Fred and password 123. So there's a great little plugin. It might be a little bit old, but it still works. It's called Force Strong Passwords. And it's a little bit better than the built-in WordPress one. The built-in WordPress password, when you type in a password, it tells you, oh yeah, this is strong or it's weak or bad, but it still lets you use it anyway. Whereas that one, you can force people to use a 24-character password with uppercase, lowercase, all that sort of stuff. So it's a lot more flexible for that one. Here's a good little plugin called WP Bouncer. I've used this on quite a few corporate sites. The scenario being that you have a manager who is got a PA, and rather than get the PA a login, he just gives the credentials to her, which is a security risk. Okay? You shouldn't be giving your passwords to anyone. So this one sits on WordPress and it stores the IP address of who logs in, and then somebody else tries to log in with the same username and password on a different IP address, it goes, nah, you can't come in, someone's already using it. Okay. And also logs it so you can see who's being naughty. Session safety. So when you're logged in, WordPress stores those credentials on the local machine. It uses cookies. The way it stores that session information, it uses something called MD5, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, and something called salt keys. And these salt keys are in the WP config.php file. Now, WordPress, when you install it, comes with a default set of salt keys, and they're all the same for everyone. Okay, which means that if you haven't changed it, when you log in, your session's being saved under the same keys, under the same MD5 as everyone else. So technically, if you're on a public network, someone could be able to grab your session information. So please visit that one. This link, it will generate a new salt key list. Just copy it and paste it into your WP config.php file, and you'll be safe from that, hopefully. Okay, admin and editor users. So if you've got any questions, just shout out. Yeah, so have a look at how many admin users you have and how many editor users you have. Really, of course you need one admin user to install plugins and maintain the website, but do you need any more than that? I've been to client sites where there's about 40 administrator users, and yeah, they just create, oh, somebody can't do something, I'll just make an administrator. Well, no, that's not really the way to go. Moreover than not, editors can do pretty much everything apart from the actual site security. Okay, so have a look through your list. If there's lots of admins there, question yourself, does that person need an administrator role? Is there one process that they do that they have to have an admin password for that you can maybe give to somebody else or do another way? Okay, Linux permissions. Now most people, I would think, when they install WordPress have some sort of Linux type hosting. There are some people on Windows, this doesn't apply to them, but I'm going to cover the majority here. So it's very important for web security to understand Linux file permissions, okay? And I'm going to try to give a little overview here. It does get a little bit complex. It might require 2 or 3 bits of reading, but I'll try and cover it as best as I can. Okay. So we have something called permission groups. So we're thinking about one file here. Just say the wp-config.php file. Okay? So each file has each file and directory has 3 user-based permission groups. Okay, one group is called the user, and that's actually the owner, but it's called you. So that's the person who owns the file. So that might be the web server, or it could be you that uploaded it. G is a group which the user belongs to. Groups can be used by the hosting companies to allow their technical people to go and change files and things. And O means everybody else. That means you when you're visiting a website. So anyone who's not that or that. So anyone anonymously coming over the internet, accessing your images, they're in the O, other users. Okay, so there's 3 types of groups for each file. Okay, and within each file, within each group, you have 3 basic permission types. Within each of those, each file can be read only, so a user can only read the file. The W means they have the ability to write or modify a file or go into a directory. And X means the user can run it as a script, actually run a PHP file. Okay, let's go back here. Okay, so here we have the 3 different groups. Okay, so that's the people that own the file, that's the group, and that's everyone for the internet. And within that file, they've got read, write, execute, read, write, execute, read, write, execute. Now we get to numbers. These are all represented as binaries, 1s and 0s. You can switch it on, you can switch it off. Binary and decimal reads right to left, and it's represented as digital. So if you've got 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, all the way. So if we have this owner section, if we want all them on, if we want owner to read the file, write the file, and run PHP, which is what the web server needs to run WordPress, then we need to have all those switched on. So we put a 1, 1, 1. And we add up the numbers here. So that's the number 1, that's number 2, that's number 4. 4, 2, and 1 is number 7. And that's why we get 7 for the owner. Okay. Now, groups might be admin people, host people, might be software on the server. You might want to have them to read, but not update, not write to, and they might need to be able to run something. Now, directories have a special permission. Directories are a little bit different from files. In order to open a directory, you need to be able to execute the directory file. Otherwise, you can't go into it. Okay? So that's why you'll see this on for directories. Okay? So we've got people can read it and people can open it, but we don't want people to update it, which is this switch on, that switch on, this switch off, which is 4, and 1, which is 5, which is because it's a 5. Okay, now 755, that's usually a WordPress folder. Okay, that's usually what you set for WordPress folders at 755, and that just shows you the method. So we want the web server to be able to open it and update it. We need to be able to rename stuff. The server admins, yep, we want them to read, and it's a directory, yes, we want to open it, so execute. So it needs that, but we don't want them updating. And others as well, so that's anyone coming in from the internet. For example, WP content folders, where all your images are. We want them to go into the folder and read the files, so we need them to read, and because it's the directory, we need to be able to execute it to open it, which is why we get 4 and 1, which is 5, so that gives you 755. WordPress files, they're generally 644, and if we look back here, this is an example of 644, it's a bit fuzzy, but we have the owners, so the web server that owns a file, we want them to read, write. We probably don't want them to execute anything, okay, if this is a file, because we don't want people running stuff all the time. We'll let the web server and PHP deal with that. For the groups, the admins, we'll just give them read access to files. We don't want them updating them, and definitely don't want them running stuff. We'll leave that for the web server and PHP. And anyone else coming in over the internet to read your JavaScript, your CSS, your image files, we of course want them to be able to read the files so they can display in the web browser, but we certainly don't want them writing or playing around executing. So that's why the default file permission is 644. If we add them all up, read and write is 4 and 2, these bits are on, which will be 6. And then you just want read for these two, which will be this column here, that's switched on, which is just a number 4. We want 0 and 0, which that's going to just be 4. So that's hopefully giving you a little bit of an understanding as to Linux file permissions. It's a little bit complex the first time when you look at it and you go, but if you follow those steps round a few times, it kind of becomes second nature. Okay. So, in general, WordPress folders, directory 755. In general, WordPress files, 644. Some hosting companies might insist that you set your WP content /upload to 777 if you're having problems uploading stuff, which is an absolute no-no. Please don't do that. That means that you're giving everyone access to read, write, and execute everything, which is a really, 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 really bad idea. So if your host says that, move to another hosting company, definitely. Okay.
Sorry, the host is that you don't go with the host, is it?
Yeah, no. If that's their solution to why you can't upload stuff, yeah, it's time to move to somewhere else. Yeah. Okay, I have a new little logo up in the top right. It says Apache, which means there's something on this slide which is relevant just to Apache and not Nginx. Nginx is an alternative web server than Apache, and I know a lot more people are running it now, but I want to focus on Apache, which is the wider audience. So probably your three most important system files are your .htaccess, and that's for Apache. So that changes things like the permalinks. So when you install WordPress first time, in fact I think it comes with fancy permalinks now, but used to when you install it, when you go to a poster page, it would be $ID equals or post equals with a number, whereas you don't want that. You want it to go / this is my new blog article. So that's what permalinks are. Redirects, so if you moved an article somewhere else, you want to 301 redirect it to some other page. That's what htaccess does. It can point to error files, it can protect directory passwords, yada yada yada. There's heaps of stuff that htaccess does, so it's a very important file. You need to keep that safe. So we want to lock that down, and that's the Linux command to change the file permission to 444. Okay, 444. If you remember back, if you put 444 in this, it means read, read, read. So we're not letting anyone update it at all, not even the owner. So I want to keep that nice and secure. The next one is php.ini. WordPress runs on the language called PHP. PHP has its own system settings, and this is a configuration file for PHP. It contains things like the version of PHP, what extensions it's open, file uploads, all that sort of stuff. Lovely juicy information that any hacker would love to get their hands on to see what version of PHP and which modules you're running that might have vulnerabilities in them. So keep that nice and secure. And of course your wp-config.php, which has the WordPress database and password and salts and all that other stuff in it. So these two you can lock down to 440. Okay. Now, we don't want anyone in the world already being able to read that file at all. Anyone who visits your website doesn't need to read those files at all. They should have no access. So read for owner, for group, and nothing at all for everyone else. And that'll keep those nice and secure. Of course, you do need to modify these files. You need to go in and change the permission back up to 644. Otherwise, you won't be able to save it and edit it. Okay, and then put them back down again. Phew. Right, where are we? Okay, a happy server is a malware clean server. So if you are running your own server, you probably best to install some sort of malware scanning script on it. Malware can be hidden in themes and plugins, but it can also be stored in scripts on the server. So if you're running your own server, you have to update cPanel, Nginx, and all the other little components that are on there. Any of these, if you're not installing it from the appropriate source, can have dodgy modules and scripts in it. So you could run something like Security. Security is a service. It's $199.99 per site per year, and it will scan your WordPress, but your server for all the files just to make sure it's all nice and clean. If they find anything, I think they do say on the web server that they will fix it for free as well. So it's an insurance policy to have. They also, as well as looking for malware, if your website or server does get infected, you know the big Google red screen that comes up that prevents you from going to dodgy sites? Well, that'll get put on your website, and security can help you de-blacklist your site from all those different lists. Okay. So of course, update regularly. Oh, that's some beer. So of course, everyone's updating their WordPress core and themes and plugins regularly, and by regular I mean at least weekly. I do mine pretty much every day. There's quite a lot of services out here. One that I have used in the past is called Managed WP. It has a free layer for a certain amount of websites. It allows you to do things like, well, you install a plugin on each WordPress website. It then communicates back to this. You log into Managed WP as a service. It then lists all the plugins and WordPress core and themes that need an update, and you can basically just press one button and it updates everything straight away. So it's handy if you've got multiple websites that you look for. There's a lot more stuff that you can do. You can do things like you can lock a particular plugin from update. So if something's like really important, like WooCommerce, that you want to be able to check first, you can lock that from not being updated, and it won't update it in the next scan. Another one that I use is WP Remote as well, and that's just been bought by Maked, makd.it, and it's very good as well. They've in fact just rolled out, I haven't updated the slide, but they've just rolled out a checker now. It's like a visual regression tool. So if you go and update your website, if it tries to update the plugin on the server and something fails, and it basically takes a snapshot of your website before and compares it to after it's been updated. If there's any changes, it rolls you back or notifies you, which is quite nice as well. Yes?
Does this service manage the sites only on a single server, hosting server, across these servers?
Across every servers.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a software service that you log into, and then it communicates with the plugin back to the server from your website. Yeah.
Is there any risk in updating, like what if you get a bad plugin, like a bad update to a plugin, is there any risk in doing it quickly?
There's always risks. Yep.
There's no like reason to wait till other people have updated to see
I guess that's a process that you need to satisfy for yourself. I'm happy updating things like WordPress core straight away, because I trust that the guys have done a good job. I mentioned WooCommerce before. WooCommerce has now been taken over by Automatic, the guys who run WordPress. So their updates now are a lot better, whereas maybe like a year and a half ago, when you're updating WooCommerce, you're guaranteed breaking a site. So yeah, there's risks in just pressing the button straight away, but I think for most people, in most cases, for like users, I think just updating general plugins is a good idea. Yeah. If you're a developer, then you probably want to run a staging site anyway. Update stuff, make sure everything's okay, and then press the big button. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, so of course WordPress updates itself automatically for the WordPress core, but out of the box it only updates point releases. So if we're on 4.9 just now, so the next one 4.9.1. If your site supports it, if your host supports it, WordPress will automatically update itself to 4.9.1. If WordPress 5.0 comes out though, it won't update because that's a major update. But we can tinker around with that. You can always tinker around with stuff. So if you want more control, you can go in wp-config.php and you can add this. Define WP auto update core true. And it will then, if you set it to true, it updates everything. So if you've got running WordPress 3.6 and 5 comes out, it'll update it. Yeah. You can set it to false, just to update minor and major releases, or just minor as well, and that'll just do the small point releases. Okay. So again, you can have complete control over how WordPress updates. That was WordPress core. Now we're talking about themes and plugins. You can use the same updater in WordPress. It's turned off by default, but you can switch it on. So you can also update your plugins and your themes. So the very basic thing, in your themes functions.php, and everyone's got a function.php file in your theme, you can add these two lines. You don't have to worry about what the other things, copy and paste them. Essentially, that one will update all your plugins, and that one will update all your themes at the same time that WordPress core is updating. Now you can have a little bit more flexibility, and I've got a link to the page that tells you how to use these in a different way. So if you maybe just wanted to update all plugins but one, and I'm trying not to single out WooCommerce, but I can't think of anything else that I would want to block, then you can add another function into that tells you to update everything except for that plugin. And the same with the themes as well. So you can have quite a lot of control over that. Okay, free downloads. So we're talking about free themes, free plugins that you haven't downloaded from WP.org or any other reputable source. Be very aware if you find a website theme or plugin and it costs money, if you then Google it and find it for free somewhere else, that's a red flag. Please don't use that, because more often than not, it's likely to contain spam links and malware. Always try and go to the original source of where you get the theme or the plugin. And if it costs a little bit of money, pay for it. We really don't want spam and malware, especially not malware in themes, because of course it can read your wp-config.php file if it's run a script, and then bam, you're over. It's got access to your site, your hosting, your database. It's got access to your emails as well, and then you're really screwed. Okay, so please don't use themes or plugins from torrent sites. That's probably the number one method of getting spam and malware onto your site. And always try and download from an original source if possible. Stick to things like StudioPress, ThemeForest, the WP, WordPress.org repository for things like that. And again, there's a link here it covers that in more depth as to which places you can go. Okay, get there. Is everyone bored yet? No, still with us? Good. A lot more to go. Malware. We're talking about malware. So one of the favorite ways that malware gets into these dodgy themes is something called base64 decode. Base64 decode is the PHP function, and what it does is it takes a whole string of numbers and letters that is generated by its reciprocal one called base64 encode, and it can basically take a whole big string of numbers and out pops functions and runnable scripts. So what a hacker would do is they'd write all these PHP functions. Maybe they want to encrypt all your files, run through all your files recursively and encrypt them. So they write a couple of functions for that in PHP. They then take those functions, they put it into base64 encode, and out the back of that comes a whole string of letters and numbers, a big paragraph of it. So they then put that into the theme, and they wrap it around something called base64 decode, and sometimes they even be cheeky and they write it backwards. But essentially, you're looking at it, all you're seeing is a whole string of numbers. You don't see what it's doing. Okay, but that's probably a big red flag. There's a great website called base64decode.org that if you do find this stuff in your theme, you can go in there, paste all the strings, and it'll decode it and show you exactly what it is. Okay? Or you can use a couple of plugins. There's one called Theme Authenticity Checker, and it'll run through your themes, having a look for all these things. And one called Exploit Scanner. Now they are quite old, but they do work. I use them quite regularly. And again, they just run through all the files on your themes, checking for known issues like this, and it'll highlight them. Okay. Now, base64 decode in itself isn't evil. It's actually used extensively in WordPress.core, but I guess it's how it's used. So if you see it in footers and headers in your theme, then that's probably not a good sign. And you can always use that site to decode it and have a look to see what they're doing if you're unsure. Thank you. Of course, you want to avoid old plugins. In the WordPress.org repository, and I think when you search for it, it'll now tell you if it's not been updated in 2 years. Now, in general, that means it's not being maintained, okay? And it also means that no security issues are being fixed as well. It also could use outdated or flawed functions or really dodgy practices, and even worse, if it's an old plugin, if it does have an exploit in it. So in general, avoid old plugins. Now, it isn't a rule of thumb for everything. I use a couple of plugins that have not been updated in 2 years, but they only do one thing. You know, they've got like one function in it, so you know, I know that's safe. So when you're looking for plugins, have a look on the plugin page. Have a look at when it was last updated. So that usually gives you a good idea. Last updated, so 22 hours ago, that's pretty good. If that's over 2 years, have a second guess. Have a look at how many active installations. That'll show you how popular it is. If it's being used by millions of people, it doesn't necessarily mean it's secure, but if it's got a large audience and something breaks or something dodgy, that usually means it's going to get fixed a lot faster than it would be if one had just 5 or 6 installs. And have a look at the support as well. See how many issues were resolved in the last 2 months. If there's lots, and that's good, that means it's being actively maintained. It means if people find vulnerabilities, that the plugin author's coming back and fix them or enter into discussion. So have a look at those stats when you're installing a plugin. Okay, here's my nemesis, Tim Thumb. He's not around as much anymore, but you can still find him in some old themes. It was a popular image and thumbnail resizing script back in ye olde days, about 5 years ago. As again, it's still bundled in a lot of older themes. So if you're looking through things like ThemeForest or all these other places here, maybe going back a couple of years, down maybe page 5 or 6, then yeah, you could start seeing this script being in some of the themes. It's responsible for most of the WordPress security breaches in the past 3 or 4 years. And it basically allows It allows a site visitor to load content onto your website from another machine remotely, which for me is just like, no, totally scary. Let's see. Yep. This is the, no, that's not the guy. There's a link there that tells you exactly what the vulnerability is and how it's exploited. So there was a serious issue in the script itself, and that was fixed. But the nature of Tim Thumb itself, being able to remotely access stuff on another server, is way, way bad. So you really, really shouldn't use it. And for that reason, you can check the version. So if you're running version 2.8.14, then that's the most secure version. I cringe when I say that. That's the most secure version. If you're running anything less, no, get rid of it, change. And even the guy who made Tim Thumb, it's no longer supported as of September 2014, even the guy who made it, this guy here, says don't use it. So if a script author says don't use my script, then that's pretty compelling for me. And you can read more about why it's evil down there. Okay, let's talk about Ssl certificates. Does anyone use Ssl certificates? Yep. Anyone thinks it keeps their site safe? No, it doesn't. It keeps your data safe. So all the data that's going up between your site and the server, it keeps all that nice and encrypted, but it does nothing for site security. Okay? I've had quite a few people, clients, who have misunderstood this. They went out and bought the most expensive Ssl certificate they can, and they now think their website's unhackable. I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. Sorry. Okay, there's lots of information on Ssl certificates. I'm not going to cover SSL in this, but you can go and read up about them. And if your provider supports Let's Encrypt, please press the Let's Encrypt button and get your site all nice and secure from data. If you do have an SSL certificate, you might as well use it. So in the wp-config.php file, copy these 2 lines, and it will allow you to log into your dashboard on HTTPS, which is great. If you are in McDonald's updating your posts, don't do that. Yeah, at least you'll be logging in on HTTPS. Okay, this is going back to one of the slides at the beginning, talking about new sites. Okay, so if you're installing a new WordPress website, please go through the entire setup process and get username and password done. If you went a step before that, and you know that you're going to have a site and it wants to be secure, so you're going to go ahead and purchase an SSL certificate rather than use a free one from Let's Encrypt, which you really should. If you're ordering an SSL certificate, what happens is they will then register it with a certificate authority, which will then issue this SSL certificate out to you. Hackers are now monitoring these SSL repositories, and within 30 minutes after a new certificate is being used, there's been reports of WordPress websites being hacked. So they look for new SSL certificates, which has the domain name in it, the actual URL, and they add that to the script, and they actively keep scanning all the time. And if they come across WordPress installed on that particular domain and it's not been complete, zap, they get straight into it. So just bear that in mind. Am I scaring you yet? Yeah.
So just GoDaddy suggests me to use this so that my level of the Google AdWords can get very high. Is that true?
For SSL?
Yeah, they suggest me to use SSL so that the SSL can let me, my company, for the ranking of the AdWords, so to go very high for the Google searching.
Oh, right. So talk about search ranking.
Yeah,
for SSL, yeah. So as of a couple of years ago, or maybe just a year ago, I can't quite remember, Kristen will know, SSL was included in the rankings for Google last year, this year, it had an effect?
I've added that probably 2 years.
2 years, yeah. So maybe as of 2 years ago, if your site has an SSL certificate, it ranks slightly in favor for that, because Google wants all websites to be secure. So it's another method you can use to up your SEO stuff, but it's not a huge ranking, but it will make a little bit of difference. Okay. Software firewalls, yay! So let's give that additional level of security. Now you might be on a great web host like WP Engine, plug for the guys at the back. Hey, and they've got all the big hardware firewalls on there that's stopping people from getting at the websites, but there's no reason why we can't add some software stuff as well. So one plugin I recommend, I've used, I updated, I work with is WordFence. So you can get it at wordfence.com. They've actually rebranded themselves called Defiant now, but the plugin will still be called WordFence for services outside WordPress now. But anyway, focus will. Yeah, so WordFence, I really recommend that. It stops things like it scans for malware, it scans for Tim Thumb, hate that thing. It will look for differences in your WordPress core, plugins and themes with the repository. So if someone's been tinkering around with a theme on your website, it does a little match for the one in WordPress.org and says, oh, those two are a little bit different, something suspicious there. It looks for Sql Injection. It's a login limiter, so brute force. People are trying to guess all your passwords. It stores the IP and goes, nah, you can't do that anymore. So lots and lots of other things. So this is also, from my research, the only WordPress firewall, security firewall, that will detect cryptocurrency miners as well. Security doesn't do it. The other one doesn't do it. Is it Greenlight? There's 3 of them that I contacted. None of them detect cryptocurrency miners. Nope, it doesn't. Okay, so what are cryptocurrency miners? It's a new breed of malware. It's not actually malware, but it's being used as malware. Everyone knows what Bitcoin is. Well, there's lots of different types of money out. It's called cryptocurrency. There's one called, have I put it here? I can't remember what it's called, but there's a company called CoinHive, and they mine a particular cryptocurrency. They've got a little JavaScript currency miner that you can embed in a website legitimately. So when a person comes and visits that website, it then runs and tries to mine for that particular coin, that currency. It spins your CPU and your fans up to 100%, so you usually know what's happening. But there's been a lot of people now injecting that into WordPress as malware. Okay, so they set up an account for themselves at CoinHive. They then infect a plugin, like the one we mentioned before. It then gets broadcast to 1 million websites, and they start generating lots and lots of money from that. So you're going to see that as a malware attack rise in the next year or so. Yeah, so use 100% your CPU power. It's quite funny. I've got an 8-core Intel machine, and I've got like 12 fans on mine, and I ran one of these, and it was like a Ferrari in my room. Oops, stop that. So again, it's a grey area between legit use. So some people actually use it legitimately to mine for the currency. But again, it's being used as malware now. So this is why a lot of the firewall and malware scanners are looking past this code, because it's not yet at the point now where it is a big threat. It's just on the kind of edge of being a threat. So yeah, WordFence is the only one that I know that detects these miner scripts for you and will actually disable them. Okay, must be time for beer. Oh, I've not finished yet, don't worry.
It's back.
There we go. I left that slide blank intentionally. Okay, prevent login attempts. So if you don't want to install WordFence, if you don't want that big heavy brute force thing, I really do recommend you install one plugin. It's called Limit Login Attempts Reloaded. And it will try and stop that brute force stuff by detecting IPs and usernames and ban them after X amount of time. I'll go a little bit fast here because there's a lot more slides to go. For logins, when you log into WordPress, if you get the username right and the password wrong, it shakes a little window and says, error, the password you entered for the username admin is incorrect, which is helpful for hackers because I now know that you've got an admin user. Okay, so now I can target on your password. So we don't really want that little box up there, so you can remove it by adding this line to your functions.php, and then that just gets rid of that little box. Okay, so don't be helpful to hackers. Of course, you should be backing up your website, and there's lots of different ways to back it up. There's really no excuse at all not to back up. There's lots of different things. You can back up to email, which is a very, very simple way of doing it, but it's free. You can back up to Dropbox, so you can sign up to Dropbox and you get X amount of gigabytes for free, so you can back up to that, and that's free. Or you can kind of go in between. You can use something like Xcloner, which allows you to back up to Amazon S3, which is a low-cost storage bucket. It does cost, but I've got several terabytes in there and I pay about 10 cents a year or something for it, so it's really, really cheap. Or you can go into the paid one. So one popular one is Backup Buddy. It's popular and, yeah, a little bit sometimes. But yeah, so you pay for that one. The one that I use for all my clients' website is WordPress. And WordPress is the one that's written by Automatic. It doesn't cost very much, so $5 per month for one daily backup. Or you can pay $15 per month per site and you get real-time backup. So I've got all my e-commerce clients and membership sites on the real-time backup. And it gives you a nice little interface. You log into the dashboard and you can press one button and you can restore your database, your plugins, your themes and your uploads. So it's good. It's a no-brainer for the money for me. When you're doing backups, a lot of people forget about retention frequency. Retention frequency is the ability to go back in backups. So if you use your website infrequently and you find it's been hacked, and you find it was hacked 3 months ago, do you have 4 months of backups that you can go back and restore it from? So that's what retention frequency is. So think about how you're storing backups and how much you are storing. And please do a checkup, maybe like once a quarter or once every 6 months. Download a zip file and unzip it to make sure it works. There's nothing worse than downloading your backup file, unzipping it, it goes broken archive. You're like, no. Okay.
Excuse me, well, how do you test it without interfering with your current site?
Oh, you can just download it on local and unzip it into a folder, just to make sure it unzips properly.
And your local?
Your local machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so your laptop, whatever. Yeah. Okay, so that was all the fundamental stuff. Let's talk about Paranoia now. So this is going the one step further. So if you do all the stuff before, then your website should be pretty secure. This is going the extra mile, really. Okay, I talked about two-factor authentication. Does everyone know what two-factor is? Everyone use it? Good. What it basically means is having something in addition to your username and password. It's usually a code from a device. You've maybe seen some corporate people going around with little stick things with the numbers on it. But more commonly, people use their mobile phone now. So the one that I use is Google Authenticator. So you set it up with the website. There's a plugin for it. You then hold the Authenticator up with a code and it comes up. And then next time you want to log into your website, yes, you put your username and your password, but now you have to put in the code from your mobile phone, which is cool. The idea behind 2FA is that you've got something on your person that hackers don't have. So getting into username and password makes it really, really difficult if they've got something on you. How does WordPress store its passwords? This is a little bit complex. I'll try and run through it. So WordPress stores passwords in the database. There's something called assaulted on MD5 hashes. I know I'm using kind of big words, but I've got links that explains it all. Using something called portable PHP hash framework, essentially your password looks like that in the database. So it's not plain text, it is scrambled. This tells you the password type that it was done using this way, and that's the hash of the password. A password hash is like a scramble. Okay, it's not a scramble. Yeah, it's a scramble. So the passwords themselves are not stored in the database. Okay, they use a hash, which is something that links to the password. If you forget your password, a lot of people like to go in via phpMyAdmin in the database and actually paste in an MD5 hash of a password and then log in. So what do I mean by that? If you forget your password, there's a website, there's lots of websites online, it's an MD5 hasher. So it brings up a little box, you type in a password that you want to use, just say it's password 123, don't use that. Press a button and it gives you this big string out that then you can then copy and put into your database for that user, and then try and log in with password 123 and it'll let you get in. Okay. So let's see. The MD5 hash, the way that the passwords are hashed, was actually designed for high volume, for being fast, not for security. Collision resistance is the amount of times that you need to try and break the algorithm before you can break it. So it's approximately 2 to 64, which seems really high. So that's 2 with 64 0 times to try and break it, to try and crack it. Unfortunately, that's now with current computing power, it's been broken. So in general, MD5 hashing is now insecure, it can be broken. So MD5 and salts, it's still a poor choice. It's designed to be fast, and because computers are getting faster now, that means it's less secure. So modern GPUs, they can generate billions of candidate passwords and try and compare them. So that's where the brute force comes from. So they're getting all these really fast computers to hash all these passwords in a dictionary and compare them to the MD5 in the database. And then they go, oh, okay, it's basically called a rainbow table. And then they know what the password is and they just paste it in. So let's see, there's lots of technical stuff there. There is an alternative if you're kind of getting a bit scared, if your passwords are insecure. Something called bcrypt. Now bcrypt is a different way of hashing your passwords. It's actually intentionally takes a long time, we're talking about milliseconds here, but it takes a relatively long time to calculate the hash for a password. And over time, that iteration count, the amount of time it takes to calculate it, can actually be increased. So what the developers are trying to do is they're trying to build a way that hashes a password that also keeps up to date with current computing power. So as computers get faster, they then increase the iterations, so it takes longer now for you to hash the password. So they are trying to be as adaptive as they can. So it's done to resist brute force attacks as computational power increases. There's a reference to what bcrypt is here, and there's also a plugin for it. But there's a caveat. You can install that tomorrow, but you need to be running PHP 5.5.0 or greater, which everyone should be running at least 7, hopefully. Yeah. So have a play around with it. It's pretty cool. I've got all my sites on bcrypt. There's biometric authentication, so using all the bits from you. So if two-factor authentication is not good enough for you, biometric authentication uses things like your voice or your fingerprints. And it's probably going to be the normal way of authenticating with web devices in the future. You already do it on your iPhone and your Galaxy with your thumb. Yeah. So that's going to be more and more prevalent for web stuff, I think, in the next few years. And hopefully hackers don't get parts of your anatomy. That'd be really, really bad. Okay, there's a couple out there just now. There's rapid secure login. So again, a fingerprint via your mobile phone. There's an app, so you can unlock your website using your mobile phone and fingerprint. And there's a facial recognition one as well. So you kind of do a smile to your phone like that as you try and log in, which looks really hysterical. Okay, and here's other things you can do. You can move the WP content folder. WP content is where all your images and stuff are. So I'm going to run through all these slides because it's basically just copy-paste. So in your WP config file, you can define another path to your WP content just to make it a little bit harder for people to find out where stuff is. A caveat with that is that badly developed plugins and themes that might hard code WP/content could break. You basically have to ask WordPress where's the content folder and it tells you. You can protect wp-config.php file if you're on Apache using htaccess, again important file. You can say I don't want anyone to access that file from outside. Okay, easy way to protect it. And then nobody can look at it from outside except for the web server itself. Sql injection, that's when people try and drop SQL into fields and hope that it's not validated properly and get access to your database. You can, again, use the htaccess, drop these lines in it, and what it's basically doing, it's looking at the URL of the website for anything that has the script name in it with a little greater than and less than things. So if it sees like a script in one of the fields or the parameters, it goes, no, stops that. So it's a very, very quick and simple way to try and stop those, only on Apache. On Apache again, there's some hosts that leave directory browsing on. I've seen this, which means that if you types into like WP content 2017/01, then it'll show what's in the directory, which is really uber bad. So again, htaccess, options minus indexes, and that switches that off. It should be off by default, but sometimes it's not. You can secure the WP admin folder as well. On cPanel, you'll probably see something like password protect directories. If you set that up, then when you try and access the directory, your web browser throws up the little dialog box asking for a separate username and password, even before it gets to the WP admin folder. And there's a tutorial on how to do that. If you're doing that, please make sure that you let something called admin-ajax.php through. The admin-ajax.php is when WordPress sends commands to the browser back in secret, I guess. That is in your WP admin folder. So if you block it completely, doing that, then that means that any AJAX requests that the server is trying to run will also get blocked. So if you're doing that, that doesn't work. If you're doing that, then you also need to do this to allow that one file access. Okay. Please disable the user file editor. So in themes, appearance editor for themes and plugins editor, we really don't ideally want your clients and people to be updating plugin and theme files to the editors. So add in define disallow file edit to WP config and those little things disappear, which is handy. Change the default table prefix. No, don't do that. We don't do that anymore. It does absolutely nothing for security. Because once an attacker has access to your database, they can basically find the table prefix anyway. So there's no point in doing that anymore. You can be a big brother. So if you've got other people who are logging into your database, you want to see what they're up to. There's a great plugin called WP Stream. Excuse me. It records everything that everyone does. So if somebody sneezes before they log into your WordPress website, it'll log it, I guarantee you. Just be careful when you're using this one though. If you've got everything switched on, it will slow down your website a lot and it will add a lot of stuff to the database. So you really only want to use it as if you're suspicious about something happening. Almost there. Again, you can change the wp-login.php file, which is the main file that WordPress uses to log in, using htaccess again, and that's why we lock this little file down at the beginning, because it's quite useful, called a rewrite rule. So you can change yours just to be login. So now you log in with mywebsite.com/login rather than wp-admin, or wp-login.php. You can also change the /wp-admin itself as well, using this. So wp config and functions, you add all these things in. So step 2, you change your htaccess, and now you can access your website via a secret folder. So if someone tries to do wp/admin, it won't work. I actually got caught out. I got this on a lot of my clients' websites, and there's a new person came in and they thought they knew about WordPress, and they went to log in right in front of the manager and went wp-admin, and it came up, what's that? So they were a bit embarrassed, and so was I. Disable XML RPC. It's an old protocol for posting and updating stuff to WordPress. It's used by things like Jetpack and the official Android and iPhone app. So if you do use those things, don't disable it. But it has been used as a vector for security attacks. So if you don't use Jetpack and you don't use the mobile phone app, then yeah, you can probably just turn it off. There are plugins in the repository that turn it off, or you can just add this stuff into htaccess. If you yourself, your computer needs access, you can always add in your IP address there. But most people have dynamic IP addresses, so that's probably won't work anyway. Let's see, almost there. So denial of service attacks. This is when somebody creates a big botnet and they basically target your website with a million different sites asking for a refresh, and your web server goes bleh. There's not much you can do about that yourself unless you've got your own private data center, which would be nice. But you can use Cloudflare, which are tonight's sponsors. And I did have this slide in even before they sponsored this event. So as we talked about Cloudflare before, it's basically a big content delivery network, and it keeps caches of your web server's content, your site's content. So here's a website that doesn't have Cloudflare. So you've got your website running on a single server, and you've got all these bots that are attacking that one single server, and that's going to go bleh. When you attack with Cloudflare, the attacker's now hitting lots of different copies of the website. So it doesn't really stop the DDoS, but it does mitigate the effects to your one web server, because stuff's getting routed through different areas, different caches. So your web server's not getting hammered quite as much. Some more resources. So there's something called the National Vulnerability Database, which is great. So this links into ethical hacking. So when people find issues in a plugin, they go into Ethical Hacker, they say, oh, look, your plugin is a bit dodgy, here's what I found. The plugin author goes, oh, thanks very much, and updates it. And then these guys, once it's fixed, will say, oh yeah, there was a vulnerability in this plugin. So that keeps all the plugins and themes, any issues there. There's a WordPress blog, and they have a free security scan as well. They use something called Gravity Scan, I think. The security blog as well, Security, the big security firm, is good. There's the WordPress.org itself. They've got a page on hardening WordPress. It does very fundamental stuff, but it's a good start to look at. There's also a WP Scan vulnerability database. It does something very similar to this one, but very specific for just WordPress. And of course, my blog. I got a free ebook you can give away. My link's disappeared. Oh, that's a bit weird. I'll put the link up on the meetup page. It's a free ebook. I go through most of the stuff in the first set of slides in a nice friendly way. So you're welcome to download that. And that's it. So I think I covered a lot of stuff here tonight. There's a lot of things probably that I've missed out. If I have missed out something and you want to let me know, then give me a tweet, developer will. Yeah, I'm knackered. I don't know about you guys.